I want him in Congress. Represents Inland, California, Sacramento, Fresno, neck of the woods, Congressman Tom McClintock. Unfortunately, one of the 8 Republicans who voted against impeachment of Mayorkas, the head of the Department of Homeland Security. Congressman, we've been talking about you for the last 2 hours.
Okay. That's an occupational hazard of this job.
I'm glad you're here, though, Congressman. It's great to talk to you, sir.
Glad to be here.
Why did you vote against impeaching Mayorkas?
Because it's completely unconstitutional. Impeachment's a very limited power to remove officials for, quote, treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, a high crime is an actual crime that's related to the office. Now, Mayorkas is guilty of maladministration, neglect of duties, malfeasance in office, but these are not impeachable offenses. And we know that because the American founders specifically rejected them at the Constitutional Convention. And the reason was they didn't want impeachment twisted into a weapon for political grievances. So if Greene and her friends are successful in redefining impeachment, well, then the next time the Democrats have the majority, I think we can expect this definition to be turned against the conservatives on the Supreme Court and any future Republican administration. And there will be nobody there to stop them because Republicans have then signed off on this new and unconstitutional definition of impeachment.
At what point would or could someone impeach the head of Homeland Security?
Treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
What would that look like?
If he committed an actual crime related to the office, that would be impeachable. Bribery would be impeachable. Interestingly, only one cabinet secretary has ever been impeached. That was the Secretary of War under Grant. He was impeached for, get this, running a family bribery scheme. Now, of course, there's mounting evidence now that this is exactly what Joe Biden has been doing for years. Yet, by trivializing the power of impeachment on Mayorkas, I think Greene and her friends are undermining the case that has to be made to the American people that this is a legitimate use of the impeachment power.
The Secretary of War you're talking about, Belknap,
yeah.
He was impeached for 2 reasons, at least according to the document. For one, using his position for private gain. But the impeachment document also said for criminally disregarding his duty as Secretary of War. Could one argue that Mayorkas is criminally disregarding his duty as Homeland Security?
Yes, and one could also argue that is not covered by the Constitution. But bribery is. He was guilty of, or at least charged with bribery.
But they didn't stick with it. It wasn't just bribery. They also
an impeachable offense.
They also put in disregarding of duty.
That's what Marjorie Taylor Greene is undermining by trivializing the use of the impeachment power.
Yes, and I don't want to harp on 1876, but they also put in disregarding his duty. Which is interesting.
There have been other articles of impeachment that have attempted to stretch that definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. There's no question of that. Okay. It's been used politically for years, but it is grotesquely unconstitutional. And again, we know that because we have the notes from the Constitutional Convention where the founders argued they did not want this turned into a grab bag for any political grievance of the day. Madison argued that would turn the executive into a mere minister of the legislative branch, and that was totally undermining the separation of powers that's at the heart of our Constitution, that they believed was absolutely essential to protect our liberty. And by the way, I oppose the impeachments of Donald Trump for exactly the same reason. No actual crime was ever cited. And I don't recall Ms. Greene attacking me for that stand. Hers is strictly situational ethics, but that's antithetical to our Constitution and to the whole American concept of the rule of law.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Congressman, if Marjorie Taylor Greene said that we need to impeach Pete Buttigieg because he wants to build high-speed rail. And you and I from California, we know that that's a huge waste of money, and I want to impeach him. This is categorically different than that, though, no? Than merely a disagreement in policy?
How so? what has been alleged that's an actual crime related to the office? Not enforcing the law adequately? Well, I agree. He has been completely recalcitrant in that. But that's not an impeachable offense. Let's remember that the illegal immigration crisis is the direct result of deliberate policies of this administration. Mayorkas is simply carrying out those policies as directed by the president. So even in the fantasy world where you could get a two-thirds vote in the Senate to remove Mayorkas, the policies are going to continue. Elections have consequences, and if you voted for Joe Biden, this is exactly what you voted for. And if you're surprised by that, you weren't paying any attention.
That's for
this
sure.
can't be fixed by impeaching Mayorkas, or for that matter, even Biden, because the policies will continue. It can only be fixed at the ballot box by replacing Biden with a president who will actually secure the border as Donald Trump did.
Yeah, so that's the check that we, the people, have directly.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we also have a check in the House.
That's the only check that will actually work, because as I said,
sure.
You remove Mayorkas, the policies will continue. Nothing will change except the name on the door.
Now, that's a political argument. You haven't made that one yet. That wasn't in your statement, that this is unwise politically. You made the statement that he didn't break any laws. So what do you make of the Secure the Fence Act of 2006, which requires the Secretary of Homeland Security to maintain operational control over the entire international land and maritime borders of the United States? And operational control is defined as the prevention of all unlawful entries into the United States.
Again, you're arguing that he's guilty of maladministration, of neglect of his duties, and malfeasance. Again, those are definitions that were specifically rejected by the American founders for the reasons we've just discussed.
So he's bad at his job, you're suggesting?
Yeah, he's terrible at his job. He's, I said, the worst cabinet secretary in history. But until he has committed a crime, a defined crime, the power of impeachment is inapplicable. You cannot use it without violating the Constitution.
Has Mayorkas lied to Congress?
I have not seen specific evidence that he's lied. He has distorted facts. Has he actually lied? I don't think that's ever been proven. And by the way, let's talk about due process for a second. If he has lied to Congress, that charge needs to be brought before him. Now, take a look at how the difference of how the Biden matter is being treated. The House Oversight Committee is currently painstakingly assembling evidence in the Biden situation. And that's being done in the right way. The president's defenders get to weigh in on every scrap of evidence. It's ugly, it's messy, but it's due process. The accused gets his say as well as the accuser. Otherwise, the proceedings have no legitimacy. So by taking the Mayorkas impeachment directly to a vote, without first exposing the charges against him to rigorous cross-examination, to due process, I'm afraid Green is further destroying the legitimacy of that process. And in the case of the Biden bribery, I think that's a legitimate question we need to be addressing, and we are addressing in the right way. But simply taking a matter to the floor, saying, well, he lied, well, okay, well, show us the lie, show us the proof of the lie, and allow due process to go forward. What does he say to those charges? That's been completely short-circuited by this unconstitutional and extra-constitutional act of Green and her friends.
On April 28th, 2002, Chip Roy, under oath, will you testify under oath that we have operational control under the border? He said, yes, we do. So we clearly don't. And that's not a matter of opinion.
The problem is that's a matter. What he would say is that's a matter of opinion.
Yeah, but Congressman, you can do that all day long, right? Someone could do that. Like any crime is a matter of opinion.
I'm only defending the devil because it's essential to protect the laws that protect the rest of us. And the fact of the matter is, his argument would be that's a matter of opinion. If you want to use the precise definition, it means there are zero border crossers, in which case there has never been operational control of the border under any administration. In fact, he has said exactly that before our committee when he was questioned about it. So do I think his opinion is sound? Absolutely not. Do I think he is distorting the truth? Yes, I believe he is. Can we impeach him for that? Well, if we're going to do that, we'd better have the full inquiry, all of the proof laid out, and give him a chance to respond. You know, there's a wonderful scene in Robert Bolt's Man for All Seasons. William Roper, the zealot of the time, he vows to cut down every law in England to get at the devil. And Sir Thomas More replies, he says, "Oh, and when the last law was down and the devil turned around on you, where would you hide, Roper, the laws all being flat? This country is planted thick with laws from coast to coast, man's laws, not God's. And if you cut them down, and you're just the man to do it, do you really think you could stand upright in the winds that would blow then? Yes, I'd give the devil benefit of the law for my own safety's sake." And we've already seen that power turned against Donald Trump in two of the sham impeachments of the last session. It was the Republicans who stood up and said, this is wrong. There is no high crime that is alleged. This is a misuse of power, and we stand against it. And now Ms. Green is turning all of that upside down, and I'm afraid what we're going to see the moment the Democrats take control is these powers turned against, as I said earlier, first the conservatives on the Supreme Court and then any future Republican administration. And the laws at that point will have all been mowed down, and there would be no place for refuge. That's why we give the devil the benefit of the law.
And that's a beautiful story, and I don't disagree. I can hear our audience screaming through the radio right now, Congressman, that the Democrats already have done all those things. So it doesn't matter what you do here or don't do here. Next time Trump's in office, they're going to do all of those things no matter what you do, so you might as well do the right thing now.
How do we stand against them if we've now agreed with them that this is the new standard of impeachment? We're the only party that stands for the Constitution these days. And once we stop, there's nothing to protect that Constitution.
Maybe is all right, let me hear me out here. Are you putting impeachment on too high of a pedestal as like this sacred thing that don't use this thing. This is like a weapon of last resort, the impeachment. When really it's just, as you've been saying, a part of the process. You impeach, and then there's the trial, and there's a whole process that is. I'm not calling for you to chop off his head. There's no executions taking place. Just an impeachment. How about
that? Putting it on a pedestal, yes, I'm putting the Constitution on a pedestal where it belongs.
He's not.
It's the Constitution. No, that's right. But the left is not our teacher, and the moment we allow the left to become our teacher, we have forsaken that Constitution and left it defenseless against those who would tear it down. That's the whole point that Wolf's making in The Man for
I got
All
you. But one would argue that you're not using your constitutional duty to defend the Constitution. So his oath of office says, I will, and yours, I think, right? I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And then the last part is, I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter. Is he well discharging? And again, beyond Buttigieg. You and I don't like Buttigieg.
It's a terrible job, but it's not treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. As I said earlier, this is even in this fantasy world where 2/3 of the Senate is going to vote to remove him from office. It still doesn't change the policy one whit, because the policy is that of Joe Biden, who the American people put in that office. That is, as I've often said, you voted for Joe Biden. This is what you voted for. And he was very clear that we would have open borders, and that's exactly what we've had, and it's been a complete disaster. But that is a problem that has to be fixed at the ballot box by electing a successor who will actually secure the border as Donald Trump did.
In the articles of impeachment, I don't agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene, her last point, when she talks about how, remember the border agent on the horse whipped the Haitian migrant or whatever, and Mayorkas came out and said that was...
Actually, he didn't whip him. That was the whole point.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And Mayorkas was like, oh, that's horrifying and systemic racism and whatever. And she made in her articles of impeachment something like, oh, that would hurt the morale of whatever.
Well, it was a grotesque denial of due process by Mayorkas. Again, not impeachable, but certainly
totally. I don't think that's impeachable either. That's
ought to be offended by.
Very good.
Exactly what she's doing, bypassing that question of due process in one of the most powerful provisions that the Constitution entrusts the Congress with.
And I bring that up only because I agree that part not impeachable, just horrific and bad, whatever, not impeachable.
My point is the reason it's bad is because of the denial of due process for those Border Patrol agents, and it's denial of due process that is at the heart of her resolution. Because this has never been. But
isn't the impeachment part of the due process?
Where the other side gets to weigh in.
Isn't the impeachment part of due process?
Due process is important to impeachment.
Isn't that one step of due process? Well, I mean, you can due process all day long. You can due process forever.
It has to underpin the way you go about impeachment. You have the other side. And again, this is something that the Democrats violated in the second Trump impeachment.
Yeah, by doing it
there
first,
were no hearings. There was no right of the accused to have their day in court, as it were.
And she would say we've had lots of those.
To the floor.
Guys, I only cut you off here because
that's destructive of the process.
I only cut you off because we have one more minute, Congressman. How much of this is because you don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Not a bit of it. Again, I argued exactly the same points in opposition to the impeachments of Donald Trump for exactly the same reasons as we're discussing. No actual crime was ever cited. The only difference is Greene wasn't attacking me for that stand.
20 seconds now. Again, what would a high crime and misdemeanor be? Give me like a hypothetical.
Any crime that was related to the office. For example, if the president accessed the tax records of an individual without a legitimate reason under the law, using his authority, that would be a high crime. Let me give you another example. Would be Bill Clinton. He committed the crime of perjury, but it was not related to the office. It was not a high crime. I don't believe that impeachment was legitimate either.
Congressman Tom McClintock, California. Congressman, I hope we can talk again. Thank you, sir.
I look forward to it, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Mike Slater, Breitbart.